In this lecture, we're finally going to talk about website personalities while I introduce what I call the Website Personalities Framework that I created specifically for this course. So remember how I explained right in the first lecture of this section how I took hundreds, if not thousands, of well-designed websites and deconstructed them and distilled them into countless web design rules, which are the ones that we just learned throughout all this section. Now, what I also did was to distill all these websites that I analyzed into 7 different website personalities. And this will help you a lot when you will have to take your own design decisions in the future, because the web design rules that we learned before will have to be applied according to the personality that you chose for your design. And so, therefore, once you have a personality chosen, your design choices are going to be a lot more limited, which will actually make it a lot easier for you to create a consistent and good-looking design on your own. So let's now see how the process of choosing the personality actually works. But first of all, what is a website personality? Well, in this framework that I created, a website personality is basically like a general feeling or a vibe that we want the website to transmit to our users. And it's also a feeling that we want to invoke in our users. So, for example, if we choose the serious personality, we want the user to feel luxury or sophistication or the sense of a premium product. So, when it comes to choosing the right personality for your design, think about what I just mentioned. So, think about how do you want your website to appear to your users? What vibe do you want to transmit? Then, based on that, you look at the list of personalities and choose the one that best fits the vibe that you want to convey. Or, if that's easier for you, you can of course also directly choose one of the 7 personalities directly from this list. Also, you can choose multiple personalities if you want, but more on that by the end of this video. But now you might ask, why is this personality actually so important? Why does it matter? Well, the answer is that it will make web design like 10 times easier for you. Because once you have a personality selected, your design options for each of the design ingredients becomes really limited. Because just like personalities in people have different traits, each of these website personalities also have different traits as well. For example, the serious and elegant personality doesn't use shadows and doesn't use border radius, while the startup and upbeat personality uses these all the time. Therefore, when we create our designs, all we have to do is to apply these personality traits for each of the design ingredients that we learned about. And what exactly are these personality traits? Well, let's find out. So we're going to start with the serious and elegant personality. And here in the beginning is again that overview text that I already showed you in the first lecture of this section, and so I'm not going to read those again for each of these personalities. And in fact, I'm only briefly going to talk about each of the personalities, because otherwise it gets very boring for you quickly. So what I want you to do is, once again, to actually download these slides and then study all of these personality traits basically by yourself, and take a look at the examples to see that what I'm explaining here really makes sense in the context of each personality. But anyway, the serious or elegant personality is used a lot in real estate or fashion and in general luxury products or services. And so here now we have the web design ingredients that we had learned about before, right? So typography, colors, images, icons, shadows, border radius, and also layout, which we will talk about in the next section. So again, for each of these personalities, we now have basically different personality traits in each of these ingredients. So the serious personality uses serif typefaces, and especially in headings, a light font weight and usually a small body font size is also quite common. Common colors include gold, pastel colors like in this example, or black, or dark blue, or gray. So basically colors that invoke some kind of luxury or high quality products. As for the images, these types of designs use very big images many times and also make sure that these are really high quality images. So many times they hire professional photographers to really create awesome pictures and photos for their designs. Now about icons, many times the serious designs do not use any icons at all, but sometimes thin icons and lines can be used. Then shadows and border radius are usually not used, as we also mentioned before actually, and a creative and experimental layout is quite common for these designs to use. Now, of course, not all of these are always present in all the serious and elegant designs. So this is more of a rough guideline and a collection of trends that you can use in your own designs because, again, it will make it a lot easier for you to do that. So not all of the websites that you will see fit into these 7 personalities, but to make it easier for you as a beginner, I think this is a great framework that will really help you. But now let's take a look at some more examples of this personality. So here you have 3 more sites, which all of them kind of roughly follow the guidelines that I mentioned exactly for this website personality. And again, I want you to look at these examples by yourself with some time, maybe after the video, or you can also, of course, pause the video and analyze yourself. Next up, we have the minimalist or simple personality, which is used commonly for fashion or portfolios of any kind, or even some kind of minimalism company like this Ark Shelter example that I have here on the right side. So typography is usually very boxy and squared and uses sans serif typefaces. As for colors, usually it is simply black text on a white background because that conveys a very minimalist image. And it's also usual that only one color is used throughout the entire design. And usually these designs use few images and no illustrations, and especially no 3D illustrations. That would just look very strange in these kinds of websites. Also, there are usually no icons, but sometimes some smaller or simple black icons can be used. Also, again, there are no shadows and no border radius in this kind of design, and the layout is usually very simple. Sometimes it's actually just a narrow 1-column layout with all the content one after another. Now let's look at a couple of more examples here. So in this first one here, for example, we do have some high quality images which adds some nice colors to the design, which is otherwise just completely black and white, as I mentioned. There are also some small black icons, and again, just like I showed you in the previous slide. Then the second one here does actually use illustrations, but they are very simple 2D illustrations, and everything is in complete black and white. And then the last one here is actually an exception to the rule of serif typefaces. So the bigger headings are actually using a thin serif typeface, but the overall design still looks quite minimalist. Next up, we have the plain or neutral personality. And so this is used in well-established corporations. So companies that don't necessarily want to make a huge impact through their design. And examples of that are like this IBM website or the Microsoft website that I showed you at the very beginning. So here typography is very neutral looking and usually using sans serif typefaces. As for the colors, these are usually kind of safe, as we can say. So they're not like too bright or too washed out or not crazy looking at all. And blues and blacks are very common because, as we learned in the colors lecture, blue is the kind of color that conveys trust. And so that's simply what these big brands or these big corporations are looking for. Now, images are quite frequent in these designs, but usually in a very small format, so they don't take a center stage like they do in other website personalities. Now, some simple icons can sometimes be used, but again, there is no shadow and no border radius usually. Finally, about the layout, these kinds of websites usually all have a very structured and condensed layout. So there are a lot of boxes and rows, just like we can see here on the right side. So this is really a very typical looking plain or neutral design. So overall, as a summary of this personality, we can just say that the goal is to not make a big visual impact. They almost try to be boring, it seems like. Now that doesn't mean that the design is bad. Alright, so bad is very different from boring. So of course, these big corporations have big budgets for designers. So they are not bad, and the design is not bad. It simply serves their goal to have a design like this. So 3 more here, and again we have Microsoft, we have Porsche here, and then this other website right here. And so if you compare this with the personality traits that I just mentioned, then you will hopefully find that all of these 3 are some neutral looking designs. Next up, we have the very important bold and confident personality trait, which is one of the ones that I really like. And it is used a lot in digital agencies, software startups, travel companies, in general, companies that want to transmit a strong image so that they are confident in themselves and are not afraid to make some bold moves. Now, one of the most distinguishing factors of bold designs is the boxy square typefaces, which are usually used using big and bold typography. Also, just as we can see in this example, big color blocks or big sections with a bright colored background are usually used to draw a lot of attention. And both these personality traits clearly display the boldness and the confidence of these designs. And the same thing is done by using lots of big images as well. Now, as for icons, shadows, and border radius, these are usually not used in these types of designs or are used very sparingly. So for example, that button that you have here, which says Shop Our Kids, it actually has a very small border radius. But in general, what I mean here is that these designs are usually not round at all. And here are 3 more design examples. And once again, we can see how the big typography paired with the very confident use of some big and bright color blocks really kind of transmits the boldness and the confidence of these brands. So that is exactly the goal of using this website personality. Next up, there is the calm or peaceful personality, and this is basically the complete opposite of the boldness and confident personality that we just talked about. Now, this one is used a lot in healthcare and in general in products that have a big focus or which actually have the main focus on consumer well-being. So this one is basically for brands that want to transmit to the user that they care about them a lot. And they do this by using soft serif typefaces, and especially for headings like these 2 that we can see here. And also, it is very common to use these washed out colors, like these blue or yellow pastel colors, or also light oranges or browns or greens. So you will see these all the time, and also in the 3 examples that I will show you next. Then the images very frequently feature a lot of people, and they also try to match the calmer color palettes that are employed. So, of course, it would be weird to all of a sudden have an image here which has very bright and flashy colors like we see in the bold personality. Now, this calm personality finally uses some icons and border radius a lot. So now we start seeing more rounded designs here at this point. Shadows, however, are not used a lot, but sometimes, of course, you will see them. And as for layouts, there are no particular tendencies. So no particularly strange or creative layouts are used. So 3 more examples, and these are actually quite common and quite easy to find these days. So this is right now a very popular website personality because more and more brands are trying to transmit that image that they care about the consumer. And so in all these 3 designs, you can see these calming pastel colors, you can see the soft serif typefaces in the headlines, and also the messaging itself. So the text content is also all about the consumer, and it is very focused on basically helping them and caring about them. Next up, we have finally the startup or the upbeat personality. And if you use a lot of technology websites like I do, then this is probably the personality that you come across the most. So, as the name of the personality says, this one is used a lot in software startups, but also in other companies that simply want to transmit a modern looking image to their customers. So this design right here is from the Stripe website, which is a very big and well-known software startup. And many people actually try or get inspired by this exact design, so by this website right here. But now about the personality traits, let's again start with typography. And this personality uses medium-sized headings and usually only one sans serif typeface in the entire design. And the tendency is for light colors in the text, which is quite a modern looking trend in these kinds of websites. Now, about the colors, greens and blues and purples are used a lot for the primary brand colors. And then as for background colors, it is very common to have a light gray background in many places in these designs. And again, we can see that right away here in this example on the right side. It's also quite common to use gradients, at least in the last couple of years. These have become really popular. Now, images are of course used all the times, and illustrations, and especially 3D illustrations, are becoming really modern these days. So you will see illustrations all the times in startup or upbeat websites, and sometimes even patterns or these small shapes that might add some visual details, for example, behind images. And I think I showed you that in one of the lectures before. Also, icons and shadows and border radius are all used very commonly. So these designs are again getting more around as all the other previous designs that we talked about, and shadow is also more used than before. Now, about some common layout patterns, it is quite usually to see something like rows of cards or rows of product features and the Z pattern in startup designs. And we will learn what those actually are very soon by the beginning of the next section. And now again, 3 more examples, and you can see in all of them that they use a very simple and clean looking typography. So the text is not too big and the colors are also quite light. And actually in the first example, I would even say they are a little bit too light. Also, you can see these light gray background colors used all the time, especially in the first 2. But in the last one, basically we have the same thing, but in a dark mode design. So these 3 examples really tick all the boxes of a modern startup and upbeat design, which again, I'm sure you have seen this kind of design all over the place these days, because it is by far one of the most popular ones that we see these days. So I would say this one and the calm personality are the most common ones. And now, finally, personality number 7 is the playful and fun personality. So designs that employ this personality are usually for companies related to products for children or for animals, or many times also for food, actually. Now here, the typography is usually very round and creative. So many times, actually, some variation of handwritten fonts are used. And sans serif typefaces are actually quite common. Now, one of the most distinguishing features of this personality is the very frequent use of color in this design. So using a lot of color all over the place, like in backgrounds or in the text or even inside of images, is what gives these designs the very playful and fun vibe. Of course, a lot of images are also used, and sometimes even like hand-drawn illustrations. So again, these help giving these designs their playful vibe. And the same thing is true for icons and shadows and border radius. So again, all of these are very common and are used all the times, and many times even in a hand-drawn style, especially for the icons. Now here we have 3 more examples, which are maybe a little bit less playful than the one that we just saw, but still, I think that these 3 ones, especially thanks to their use in color and some hand-drawn elements, can be classified as a playful and fun personalities. So again, hopefully these serve as an inspiration for you, and yeah, I hope you can check out all of these designs here with a little bit more time, analyze what's going on in them, and really see how they compare with the traits that I just described. Now, you can actually finish the lecture at this point without any problem, because at this point we talked about everything that is most important in the website personality framework that I invented basically for this course. So what we just learned is the most important thing that you should know, but if you want to dig even deeper into design and into this website personality framework, then let's keep going. So what I want to show you now is that we can basically place all these 7 personalities into this axis of serious playfulness or calmness and boldness. So basically, serious is the opposite of playful, and calm is the opposite of bold in basically this framework. And so here we're now going to learn that we can actually combine playfulness and boldness in one single design. So playful basically means, as we just learned, that the design is more colorful and everything is more rounded, and there are more shadows and illustrations in general. Now, placing these personalities into the playfulness, the first one needs to be the serious or elegant personality. So this one is the one that is the least playful. So it is the most serious one. Then there is the minimalist one, then the plain and neutral personality, then the startup and upbeat, which is already quite playful, but then of course the most playful one is in fact the playful and fun personality, right? So this is basically these 5 personalities ordered from the most serious one to the most playful one. Then there's also the boldness axis, and so as we learned, the bolder the website design is, the more boxy and squared the typefaces are, and the bigger and bolder the typography is going to be, and the colors will also be, let's say, brighter or more flashier in bigger blocks of color. And the boldest personality is of course the bold and confident personality. Then on the other hand of the spectrum, we have of course the calm and peaceful personality. And as we also learned, the calmer the design is, the more the headings use soft serif typefaces and these washed out colors and illustrations. But now you might be wondering why all of this actually matters and why I'm showing you all this. Well, the reason is that this can basically show us that all these personalities are actually fluid and can be placed inside of this spectrum of playfulness and boldness, which means that some trait of the boldness or the calm personalities can basically get injected into one of the other 5 personalities. So let's consider the startup personality. Sometimes this kind of design wants to appear also a little bit bolder or more confident. And so then they can simply take some of the personality traits of the bold or of the confident website personality and use them in their own personality as well. Or, of course, it can also go the other way. So the startup personality might want to appear a little bit more caring about the consumer, and so in that case, it can try to embed some of the character traits of the calm personality inside of its own designs. All right? And so basically what I want to show you here is that some boldness or some calmness can get injected into these other 5 website personalities. All right? Now, the other personalities can actually also get mixed. For example, you could mix the serious personality with the startup one, but that is actually a lot less common. So these days, it's mostly boldness and calmness that gets embedded into one of the other personalities. And sometimes even boldness and calmness can be mixed, which can make for some very interesting designs, but that is actually a bit more difficult for beginners to pull off. All right, and to illustrate all this, let's again take a look at a couple of examples. And this first one here is what I would classify basically as the base personality, as a minimalist and simple design. However, this design then does use some big and bold typography and also has these 2 big colored blocks. They're not really that bright or flashy, but still they kind of are part of the bold personality. And so here I would say that some boldness got injected into the minimalist or simple main personality. Then another one, and here I would say that this is kind of a startup personality, but then again it got injected with some boldness, as we can see with this very big and boxy typeface. And yeah, the typography in general is very bold and big as well. And in this one, we can actually even see some hints of minimalism. So the design is mostly black and white with some blue links, and there are no icons or shadows or illustrations here at all. But anyway, let's take a look at another one. And this one is mostly bold, I would say. So there are a lot of bright colors. The typography is quite big as well. But then we have these irregular and round design elements, and also the hand-drawn icons and this pattern here behind the image. And so there is clearly some playfulness going on in this design. Maybe we could even say that playfulness is the main personality and boldness the secondary, so to say, but that's not really relevant anyway. What matters is that here we have kind of a fusion between these two, and it makes for a really nice looking and creative design. Then here we have another bold or confident personality, I would say. So the headings are huge and there's a lot of bright color blocks. I mean, here you can only see one of them, but the rest of the website, as I saw it, actually had a lot of those. But then there is actually some calm or some peaceful personality traits injected into it, and especially in these soft serif typefaces in the headings, and also in these calming pastel colors that are used throughout the illustrations of the entire site. So this is the situation that I mentioned, where actually even the calmness and boldness can be mixed in one design. And I think this works really, really nice in this situation actually, but again, it might be a little bit harder to actually create this type of design. Then just 2 more. Here we have a startup or upbeat personality with some calm traits inside of it. And many times the calmness trait that gets injected is usually these soft serif typefaces in the headings. So that is actually a big trend that I've been observing in all kinds of designs these days. And the same actually for these calming illustrations. So these 2 character traits of calmness are these days injected into all other kinds of personalities. And actually here I have another example of that. So here again, the exact same 2 things have been injected right into this design, which works really nice for the reason that I mentioned before. So for the fact that this kind of shows the user of the site that this company actually cares for them. So using these traits really makes the user feel that this is not just some cold and faceless company. Somehow these design choices makes the user feel more secure and more trusting also in a way. And so these companies are taking advantage of that using these design decisions. All right, and that's actually it. That is my website's personalities framework, and I hope it made sense to you, and I hope that you might use it at some point when you create your own designs. And of course, we will use it when we create our big OmniFood project a little bit later in this course. So again, I hope you learned something here and that it was interesting. And I see you now in the next video, where we will finally finish up this section and talk about getting inspiration. So another important ingredient when you need to come up with your own designs completely on your own. So see you there.